Are you afraid?
It was meant to be a simple solo camping trip. I'd picked a spot on the edge of Lake Temiskaming, miles from the nearest road, a place I'd visited once before and remembered for its absolute stillness. I craved that kind of silence, the kind that lets you hear your own thoughts clearly, or the rustling of leaves, or the distant call of an owl. Just me, my tent, and the vast, dark water. I cooked a simple meal, ate it slowly, and watched the last colors drain from the sky, leaving behind a deep, inky blackness overhead. The lake stretched out before me, a mirror for the few stars that had already emerged. After eating, I decided to take the canoe out. The moon was a slender crescent, not offering much light, but enough to navigate by if I stayed close to shore. There's something meditative about paddling across still water at night. The rhythmic dip of the paddle, the soft gurgle as it pulls back. It cleanses the mind. I didn't go far, just a few hundred yards from my campsite. The air was cool and smelled of pine and damp earth. I drifted for a while, just letting the currents take me, staring up at the constellations I rarely got to see in the city. The silence out there was profound, broken only by the occasional splash of a fish or the distant hoot of an owl. That's when I noticed it. Not a sound, but a disturbance on the water, perhaps 100 yards away, towards the deeper center of the lake. The patch of water, perhaps 10 feet in diameter, seemed stiller than the rest. Like glass, but somehow darker, absorbing what little moonlight there was. It wasn't reflecting the sky. Curiosity got the better of me. I figured it was some kind of temperature anomaly, or maybe a localized calm patch. I started paddling towards it, slowly, quietly. I remember the air growing colder as I approached, a sudden drop in temperature that didn't feel natural for the general ambient air. It was a localized cold, right around that dark patch. As I got closer, I saw that it wasn't just still. It was utterly motionless, perfectly flat, like a pane of dark glass laid onto the lake's surface. No ripples, no reflections, just an opaque blackness. It was circular, about 15 feet across, and it seemed to pulsate with its own absence of light, absorbing everything around it. I stopped paddling when I was about 20 feet from it. The cold was intense now, raising goosebumps on my arms. I could hear my own breathing, louder than it should have been in that immense silence. There was no explanation for it. No wind, no current, no visible object holding the water so perfectly flat. Then I noticed something. Not floating on it, but within its surface, just beneath. It was difficult to make out, shrouded in that darkness, but it looked like a reflection. Not of the moon, or the trees, or even my canoe. A different reflection. It was hazy, indistinct, but it had a faint phosphorescent glow to it. I leaned forward, straining my eyes. The glow pulsed, almost imperceptibly, from within the dark surface. It wasn't reflecting anything above the water. It was showing something from below, something that didn't belong. It was a massive, blurry form, a jumble of pale, indistinct shapes writhing slowly. I pulled the canoe back, slowly, my heart starting to pound. Whatever it was, it began to rise. The water around it didn't ripple, it just seemed to stretch. Like a membrane, expanding as something pushed up from beneath. And then, it broke the surface, emerging onto the damp sand at the water's edge where my canoe had been earlier. What stood there was not humanoid. It was a massive, dark, wet-looking bundle of incredibly thin, branching, stick-like limbs, radiating outwards from a central point, like a root ball ripped from the earth. Its skin appeared unnaturally damp, glistening in the faint moonlight, despite the dry sand and air around it. Two phosphorescent eyes were set impossibly far apart across the central mass, glowing faintly, fixated on my canoe. A dark horizontal slit, its mouth, was positioned too low on the central mass, close to the damp ground. It wasn't moving towards me, but it was watching. The eyes didn't blink. They just glowed, unwavering. The branching limbs, some as thick as my arm, others as slender as twigs, shifted almost imperceptibly, causing the damp sand beneath them to compress and darken. It seemed to be breathing, a slow, silent contraction and expansion of the central mass. I didn't make a sound. I just watched it, paralyzed by a terror so profound I couldn't even paddle away. My mind screamed at me to move, to flee, but my muscles wouldn't obey. I was trapped, caught in the beam of those distant, glowing eyes. The air was still bitterly cold, a small pocket of Arctic air just around me and the thing on the shore. It just stood there, or lay there, on the sand, for what felt like an eternity. The low, dark slit of its mouth didn't move. The branching limbs didn't reach out. It simply existed, an alien presence by the familiar lake, watching. The campfire I'd left burning, a small beacon of normalcy, was now just a distant ember beyond its dark form. And then, as slowly and silently as it had appeared, it began to sink back into the water. Not a splash, not a disturbance. The dark, perfectly flat circle on the lake's surface expanded, encompassing its form, and it simply lowered itself back down, dissolving into the blackness. The air warmed up slightly, returning to the normal night chill. I stayed there, adrift for another hour, not daring to move, not daring to believe what I had seen. The dark patch on the water remained for a while, a perfect, circular void on the lake's surface, before slowly, gradually, it too began to ripple, to reflect the distant stars, to become just another part of the dark lake once more. I paddled back to shore as soon as I could make my arms move. I packed my tent, my sleeping bag, everything, in the dark, my movements clumsy and panicked. The canoe was on the car roof rack within minutes. I didn't even bother to extinguish the dying embers of the fire. I just got in my car and drove. I drove for hours, not stopping until the sun was high, and I was hundreds of miles away. I never looked back. I never returned to Lake Temiskaming. And I never camped alone by a lake at night again. The memory of that perfectly still water, and the thing that emerged from it, is burned into my mind, a chilling reminder of what can hide beneath the surface.